One of the big reasons why the 701 and the 690 get overlooked by a lot of adventure bike riders is the seat height. Today I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is to change the linkage and drop that seat height. The 690 and the 701 represent an excellent choice as an adventure mount, but they suffer from a few shortfalls. One of them is a very high seat height. A cost-affordable solution to this problem is a lowering link. In my choice, I'm using the KoubaLink. I've used these before on other machines, so I'm familiar with the product. And because I'm lowering the bike, definitely once you install the link, you're gonna need one of these. I've chosen to go with a Warp 9 Supermoto Kickstand. This will probably be a little shorter than what I want, but with a kickstand foot added to the bottom, I think it's gonna work out just great. And once I add the kickstand and the linkage, I'm just gonna need to slide the forks up 3/4 of an inch in the front, triple clamps, in order to maintain the handling characteristics of the bike. All in all, it's gonna take a little while to do this installation, but I think it's hugely worth it. The bike is gonna be a lot more confidence inspiring, especially in technical situations where you really wanna get your feet planted. So let's get started. I put the bike on the stand, but it still has a weight bias behind the back wheel. So I've opted to add bungee cords to the top rack, which you can see, which are lifting the back wheel up off the ground so that we can mess with the rear linkage and not have any pressure on the back wheel. Drift out the bolt. Even with lifting up the tire, it's quite snug. So a little tricky, and there's a little bit of rust on it. I'm gonna want to put a little bit of grease on that. I prefer to put grease on a large bolt like this because the grease does actually help it to lock down and stay in place, and it reduces the chance that we're gonna get some rust build up and then I won't be able to get it apart next time. So that's the back end of the linkage, and then we need the front end of the linkage, and that means the foot pegs need to come off. I'm gonna take the foot pegs off. That's a 19, just like the linkage is. In this case, because we've got the racks, we're gonna need to take off the 10mm bolts. Okay, that allows us access to the bolt that's holding the front of the linkage, which is right here. All right, so I think it'll spin on both sides if we're not careful. Yep, so you do need a ratchet on both sides or a wrench on both sides. We'll just push it out with the drift. One side stayed threaded on the other side, that's fine, no problem. But now we can take the linkage out, wiggle it out. There's the linkage, stock one, and now we can replace it with the new linkage. All right, so there's the KoubaLink for the 701, needle bearings inside, and a grease fitting so that we can grease it up and fill the inside with grease once we're all said and done. But right now I'm gonna put it in with just a little bit of superficial grease before I reassemble that. And then we'll give it a hit with the grease gun once we're done assembling everything. And then on the left side of the bike, the nut with the washer, or the bolt with the washer, needs to go back inside. All right, so you kind of need 3 hands to do this, to tighten it down. Put a ratchet on one side, ratchet on the other side. Okay, last piece of the puzzle is putting the bolt through the new link. A little grease on the threads. So we're gonna need to lift up the back tire a little bit, pressure off the link. Given the new linkage, it looks like the tire's gonna have to go up quite a bit. All right, so from a little bit of wiggling around, bolt is through. All right, now that the link is in, I'm gonna grease that grease fitting. I'd like to make sure it's packed with grease. So I'm gonna ride it for a bit, add a little more grease after a couple of days, and then I think it should be good for the rest of the season. Okay, so the link is in place. The last thing to do is to lower the front forks to match that same 3/4 inch. So we're gonna slide the forks up 3/4 inch in the triple clamps. Okay, so I'm just going to measure 3/4 of an inch and mark that right there. And I'm gonna do that on both forks. I'm gonna slide the forks up in the triple clamp until I get to the first line there, and that'll be my 3/4 of an inch. All right, and these bolts are 10 mil head, or they're a T40. It's also worth noting that the shape of the socket doesn't have really any room in behind the bolt to get in there, so you really only get half of the socket depth if you use a socket. So definitely the T40 is a better way to go on the bottom bolts. On the top bolts, there's clearance for your socket, so you're just as well off with either the socket or the T40. With the heated grips and GPS wiring and so forth in this area, I'm gonna need to undo the zip tie, make some room at the top of that fork, get the fork situated, and then gather these wires up again after the fact. All right. So now I've got a lot of space here that I can get this fork situated. I'm just gonna need to use up most of the room that's here above the fork crown. I'm gonna lower the stand to apply a little bit of force so my forks are not dangling. Then with each fork leg, I'm just gonna kind of twist it back and forth. And those are moving really super easy. All right, feels like I'm dead on the line. I'm just gonna get my tape measure and double check myself. All right, those forks look like they're exactly where they need to be. I will tighten the pinch bolts and then I'll tidy up my wires for my heated grips. So all we have to do is remove the magnet from the back of the kickstand. So there's a magnet on the back, screw to take that off. And then there's just the main pivot bolt, which is a T45. So we'll spin that out. All right, and so there's the magnet. That's the T27. So we'll have to get the magnet situated in exactly that same spot so that it'll go in front of the sensor. And really not a great design. There should be 2 screws in there to keep it lined up. You should always have a T27. If you've got a KTM or a Husky which has this setup, you're gonna want a T27 in your tool pack, because a common problem is this gets bumped and you need to realign it by just loosening it off, centering it back up again and tightening it down. Kind of a crazy design. There should be a pin or something to line this up so you don't end up stranded on the trail, because what it'll do is if this is out of alignment, as soon as you shift it into first gear, the engine will die. And that can spoil your day. You don't know what's happening. And basically you're just gonna wanna line it up perpendicular. The straight edge should be even with the with that groove, and then they've got kind of a nice edge here that you can see where you need to line it up. The only trick to this install now is going to be pulling the spring. Can't find my spring puller, so I've taken a paint can opener and bent it one more time. Okay, that's done. Okay guys, so with the KoubaLink in place, I've dropped the front and the rear of the bike 3/4 of an inch, which is the shortest drop that you can get with a KoubaLink. You can go 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1 1/2. I think you can even go 1 3/4, but once you get to 1 1/2, you have to actually grind the link. So it's kind of an involved process. Most folks not probably going to want to do that. I wanted to maintain as much ground clearance as possible while giving myself a little better reach to the ground. I've got a 32-inch inseam, and with any kind of a comfort seat, aftermarket seat like the Seat Concepts or Renasco or anybody else, the seat gets wider at the tank junction, and so it's harder to reach the ground. You know, in this case, 3/4 of an inch front back ends up to be where I'm almost flat-footed when I'm standing on the bike right now, you know, at an intersection or something like that. So hopefully this was helpful for you. If it was, smash the like, subscribe to follow along, because there's a ton more stuff that I'm doing to the bike before it's, you know, the perfect do-all, go-everywhere adventure machine, which is ultimately my purpose in doing this build. So glad you stopped by. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.